Gracie Jiu Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 53 of the Gracie Jiu Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Today my guest will be Tony Pecenski, third degree Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But let's start with our Jiu Jitsu quote. It is good to compete. It is good to be a competitor. It is great to be a Jiu Jitsu fighter. And that's from Master Hickson, Gracie. Great quote. So I want to speak just a moment about my recent trip to the Gracie Academy in Torrance, California. Went out there for the ICP, the Instructor Certification Program, and I was fortunate enough to go and help out with that. And of course, it was an incredible experience. It's always a peak experience to be out at Jiu Jitsu Heaven, but especially with so many people congregating from all over the world and coming together for their love of Jiu Jitsu and because they want to teach Jiu Jitsu. So incredible energy. Saw a lot of old friends, made a lot of new friends, and just a wonderful experience. So during the training, they had a panel, a black belt panel, kind of overseeing a lot of the instruction and leading some discussions. And the panel consisted of Frank Cucci, Chet Skimahorn, Carlos Diaz, Evandro Nunes, Brett Thompson, Henner Gracie, Hiron Gracie, Pedro Sauer, Alan Manganello, Mark Marines, Todd Tanaka, and Alex Stewart. And while I was observing the panel, it occurred to me that all but three of these gentlemen I've had as guests on my show. So thought that was really cool, and that makes me feel really great to have had such great people on the show. I do plan to get those last three on as soon as possible as well, so stay tuned for more to come on that. All right, on to our interview. Today's guest is Tony Pecenski, also known as Little Tony, and he is a third degree BJJ black belt under Rodrigo Medeiros. He's also the co-founder of the Jiu Jitsu Global Federation with Master Hickson Gracie and black belt Carlos Gama. Little Tony has over 20 years experience in grappling and BJJ, and he's had the opportunity to train with and learn from many top Jiu Jitsu practitioners. To name a few, Helson Gracie, Hoist Gracie, Horion Gracie, and Grandmaster Elio Gracie, Kaiki, Phil Miglaris, Steve Maxwell, Salo and Zandy Ribeiro, Regis Libre, and of course, Rodrigo Medeiros, who he got his black belt from. Tony has a master's degree in education in curriculum and instruction from Concordia University of Southern California, Irvine. And he started a website called Soulfight, where he produced a series of instructional DVDs. He's received international acclaim for this, and he's been featured on Budo Videos Rolled Up, InsideBJJ.com, Mat Time Radio, Open Mat Radio, and many BJJ blogs as well. Earlier this year, Tony wrote the first and only book about invisible force theory in Jiu Jitsu, entitled A Story of Invisible Power, A Path Toward Jiu-Jitsu Principles and Execution. And his recent project is the launching of the Soul Fight app. And we'll be talking about a lot of these things during the interview. After the interview, make sure to stay tuned for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. And now, without further ado, let's talk to Tony.
Okay, I'm speaking with third-degree black belt Tony Pecenski, also known as Little Tony. So welcome, sir.
Hello, Marty. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to get started.
Me too. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm very excited about it. So I know you've had a very extensive and colorful background in jiu-jitsu, spanning several years, and you've also got tons of exciting things going on today, and we're certainly going to get to that. But before we get into that, if you would just share some of the early days with us, what led you to jiu-jitsu, how that got started, and what led you to where you are today, sir.
Of course, thank you. I have a great story, and I've been doing jiu-jitsu for over 20 years now, and I like to think of myself as someone that is part of like the second wave of jiu-jitsu in the United States. The first wave being like the Dirty Dozen, the 12 original American black belts. I came after them. I was right after I started in the early 90s in Philadelphia. After seeing Royce Gracie in the Ultimate Fighting Championship 1, I said, that's exactly what I want to do. I was training karate and taekwondo, and I had a subscription to Inside Kung Fu, and I always wanted to do Wing Chun like Bruce Lee and all this other stuff. Right. So then you have Royce Gracie winning these events, and I just want to do it. I got sent away for the tapes. I got on their mailing list, and I received a mailer that said Hickson Gracie is going to be in Atlantic City, and they call Maxercise and ask for Steve. And so I did. I was 15 years old, and I convinced my mom to drive me down to the downtown center city, where I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and I met Steve Maxwell, and everyone was thinking about Jiu-Jitsu and Ultimate Fighting Championship. I figured even though I was a teenager, this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I was thinking about. So about a week later, Hickson Gracie was there. He was the first Gracie I ever met. He was walking down the steps, and I greeted him. And I remember, wearing like a little polo shirt, and I had the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu T-shirt. I grabbed the T-shirt, and Hickson was an amazing character even back then, and I just feel like I won the jackpot in being able to train Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, the real thing, 30 minutes from my house, and I didn't have to travel to California.
How cool is that?
Yeah, and it just went on from there, and I got to train, and I would go every day after school, and I in my 11th grade, like right before your senior year, I took my first plane trip with Phil Miglioris and Steve Maxwell, and we went out to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Torrance, the old academy, and they had the instructors training program, and I go, this is exactly what I would want to do if I graduate high school. I want to be an instructor. So I convinced my guidance counselor in my senior year that I wanted to be a jiu-jitsu instructor, and he signed my document where all I had to do was go to my English class and my philosophy class.
Wow.
For my senior year, because I had already finished all my credits.
That's amazing.
And my whole senior year, I was training jiu-jitsu by 12 o'clock, hitting the afternoon class, staying all night, cleaning the gym, training jiu-jitsu all night. So my senior year, I got a lot of training. And then, one thing led to another, I saved up $1,000, a little bit over that, and I moved to California, one-way ticket into the instructor's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and training program, and I did that for 2 years, 6 days a week, washing my gis on Sunday and my clothes, and that was my start.
Let me ask you, is this quote, I'm going to read a quote, and you tell me if this is applying to when you were heading out to California. I think it is because it mentions California, but I move without moving. I see it, but hands can't touch it. Absolutely free, I fly, hoping to touch down somewhere else. I go where only I can see. No lights, no sounds, just me. I change by changing again with perfect balance of my soul. And that's you at 18 years old on the plane to California, right?
Yeah, that was me on the plane ride. And
nice.
I thought I was like a little poet back then, a little philosopher. it was the real thing. And I knew I was doing the right stuff, because the first day we started the instructor's training program, one of the students said, "Hey, don't you seem like a little bit too young to be out here? Shouldn't you be in college?" And I looked at the student and I said, "If I was in college right now, I would be thinking about being here doing jiu-jitsu." And he said, "That's a good answer." So I always felt like I was at the right place at the right time.
Well, I got to say how much I admire you, because at such a young age to know, hey, this is where my passion is, and I'm going to follow it. And that takes a lot of courage. So good for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So at the Gracie Academy, that's where I got a lot of exposure to Helio Gracie's teaching method. That was what I was there for. And Horion Gracie, he would teach the instructor's program, and I learned the curriculum there. Hoist Gracie would teach all the intermediate and the advanced classes. So that was all the time where I got to really get to know Hoist and train with him, and actually relearn all my basics from what we were learning in Philadelphia at the time. And then we had already met Kaiki, so he was another black belt. So I had some really good instructors right from the beginning. And then, of course, when Grandmaster Helio Gracie would come out and give us, like, the guys in the instructors program, these semi-privates, that was such a great experience for me to I didn't speak any Portuguese at the time, nor did I understand it, but it was, you're on the mat with the master. So I was learning so much. And of course, prior to that, Helson Gracie was still all part of my curriculum. And then after I did 2 years in instructor's training, I wanted to, begin university and college. And I moved back to Philadelphia and continued with Steve Maxwell. And at the time we had Helson Gracie, and then Helson had brought in this interesting character named Salo Barrio, and he was like a world champion, and I couldn't wait to see what he was all about. So that was where I really got to see, like, my first big taste of the sport of jiu-jitsu, how it was being applied at the time. And this is about 2000, 1999. And that was my first big trip to Brazil and seeing all that. And I thought Salo was a good person to model after, because he's such a strategist. He understood the Gracie family approach, and he could also play in the modern, so I could get like both. It was very important for me to understand the different schools of thought. And then I met one of his brown belts who would become a black belt, Aegis Libre, and he was such a young, tough, instructor, and I really liked his style. And all this time, I'm doing university, I'm training and all these things, and my dream was to open up an academy. And right before I finished my college in Westchester, I was studying to be a teacher, or to become a teacher, do my student teaching. Horion Gracie's oldest daughter, Rose, who's always been a friend of mine, she said, "Tony, you got to go down to San Diego. You haven't been there yet. I'll introduce you to Rodrigo Manderos." So I figured I had some time. I had about 3 months before I could finish my last class. And I figured, why not? Let me go to San Diego, hang out for the summer, work, surf, do jiu-jitsu. I've already been doing this for like 10 years. I got the blessing from Steve Maxwell to head there. And I asked him, I said, I want to go to San Diego. I want to be Rodrigo Manderos. I want to train there. And I just fell in love with jiu-jitsu again. And Rodrigo Manderos and the Carlson Gracie team, that whole style was very influential in my development too. So I was, training, riding my bike, falling in love with jiu-jitsu. And at the end of the summer, Rodrigo asked me if I wanted to join the team. And I said, let me go back and see what's going on with the Maxercise and all these other things where I was training. And he gave me that time. And afterwards, I was like, I'm going to graduate, move back to California, because I miss California. And that's when I opened up a school, which was inside another school. And I had an opportunity to do that. And I was like, I want to go to California, but I want to do my dream is to open up a gym, and I want to experience that. So I started that, and I dialed a couple of phone calls. I talked to Hoist Gracie. I talked to Rodrigo, and it was really pretty much the big conversation of like, what team are you going to represent? And I told Hoist that I always respect him, and I'm always, behind him 100%, but I'm going to go with Rodrigo because he took care of me, and he has a gym in San Diego where I can train. And it was like, I kind of like decided on who would one day I should earn my black belt from. So I knew it was a very big telephone call, and I've been with Rodrigo ever since. And I eventually earned my black belt like 3 years later, he made me like really earn it. I had to join like a whole other team and, you know, go through the toughness of that. And, you know, I was there from that point on. I moved back to California as a school teacher. I was teaching jiu-jitsu, teaching school, like 3rd grade, 5th grade. I started getting into distributing DVDs and traveling around doing seminars and just always trying to be like cutting edge of what was going on and the way that the internet was hitting and all the different mediums. I always wanted to be involved in something. I was helping with different schools, how to run them and helping people out. And, you know, one thing led to another. I was like, man, I had this big dream to start like a federation of jiu-jitsu. And I wanted to do something. And, you know, that led me to a meeting with Hickson Gracie and Carlos Gama and what would become the Jiu Jitsu Global Federation. So everything kind of all went together when I kept pushing and pushing and pushing and, you know, trying to like solving problems with better solutions and things like that. Like that was my journey so far.
And a very cool journey. I mean, what a great past and what a great, all the experience you've had. And like you said, kind of just working together and leading you to where you are today. And one thing that stands out is you always have been a problem solver and kind of, you mentioned being ahead of the curve, so to speak. Seems like you've always been involved in something, you know, with your background in technology and development. Tell us a little bit about the Soul Fight thing and how you got those videos going and that stuff.
Sure. The Soul Fight thing it was when I was back in San Diego and in Rodrigo Madero's school in Pacific Beach, San Diego. There's a little surf shop called Soul Grind, and I was walking past it like Soul Grind, like skateboard, and that whole summer was very special because I was pretty much burned out on jiu-jitsu. I had been training for like over 10 years. I had my brown belt for like 2 or 3 years, and I'm just like, you know, I didn't want to compete. I was a student. I don't know what it was, but that summer it rekindled, and I just felt like I was on some type of like start over, and Soul Grind, Soul Fight, and I went back. I said that's a great name for a website, and I went back and I met with my roommate, and he's like, look, Tony, if you can do a Word document, you can make a website. And he showed me some basic things. And I remember my first website that I built, and it was very crude, but, you know, I started to understand some of the basics of developing a website. And that was in like 2001. And I was 2002. I was there, and I'm like, that was my idea. And then I know I had a conversation when I was in Brazil. I don't know if it was in 99 or 2001. I met with a black belt, and I was surfing, and we were talking about, he's like, I said, I just want to teach jiu-jitsu. You know, I want to like just expose people to jiu-jitsu. And I was really, really young and idealistic. And I said, he's like, yeah, you sounds like you want to do jiu-jitsu de graça, like meaning like jiu-jitsu for free. And I'm like, no, not for free, but I want people to feel free. And he's like, yeah, like a soul surfer. You know, it was all in this type of context where like Soul Fight came out. So that was the big start for me. And, you know, I always did like really cool things with Soul Fight, and I'm always just kept it going. I always had like, I would run my academy through this website, have different seminars, people coming in, and I would go on to distribute DVDs and instructionals. And we did like tournaments for jiu-jitsu, which were at the time, it was, you know, we had the Soul Cup 1, Soul Cup 2. I was always involved in jiu-jitsu and just kind of using it as a place where people could, you know, find out a little bit about me. That was it. Absolutely.
And you also, we're going to talk about the app, which is one of your latest projects in just a moment. But before we get there, talk a little more about the federation, the Jiu Jitsu Global Federation. You mentioned who you partnered with, and tell us a little more about how that whole thing developed and what it's been like working with that federation as well as with Master Hickson.
Yeah, it's two big and separate topics, but one and the same.
Okay.
I can't remember the time. I just remember like thinking about how jiu-jitsu in our United States, or even like on a global aspect, there was always, when I came up and through jiu-jitsu, it was always like the different teams, and then the instructors would have associations. And then I would see like the instructor like travel around every weekend, do seminars and everything like that. And I was like, well, I feel like I have like a really good message. I want to help people, but I don't feel like that's the right platform or like the right model. And I was just thinking, I'm like, who has been around like the longest and has been successful? And I was like, Carlos Gracie Jr. The IBJJF, he's in the Gracie Baja and that brand. That's like such a great model. Like, well, what if there could be a federation of jiu-jitsu that was sport, education, and community? Like, where we could all come together. I'd come to the table and talk about jiu-jitsu. And I know I was just like, there's so many people that do jiu-jitsu that will never compete, or they're finished competing. They're practitioners, and instructors need to be, better instructors. And I was just like, I'm going to start. So I started every night coming home from jiu-jitsu, working and just kind of grinding it out, started filing trademarks, the World Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation, things like that. And you have to wait. You have to wait like months for that stuff to get approved. And then you get the telephone call if it's approved or not from the trademark office in the United States. And, it gave me time to put things together, have a lot of writing. And I started to put my little team together, like people that I wanted to, be a part of this. And I contacted a black belt named George Pereira, who is like a legendary Vale Tudo fighter. And he's like, this is a good idea, Tony, but I want to get my blessing from my master, Hickson. And he goes, I think Hickson wants to do a federation. And I was like, wow, that's some good information for me to know right now. Maybe one day I'll reach out to him, see how it goes. And I had met Hickson like maybe once or twice at a jiu-jitsu tournament or at a seminar. He took a seminar. I took a seminar, and I was amazed with his invisible jiu-jitsu and everything like that. But I was never able to. I always trained with his other brothers and things like that. So after Metamoris 2 with Crone, he was in the main event there. I knew Hickson was in town, and I was living in Redondo Beach, and I just kind of put something out on Facebook. I was like, I want to meet Hickson. And one of my instructors named Julio Foco Fernandez gave me Hickson's email. And I messaged Hickson. I said, I have an amazing idea. I've been working really hard at it, and it's about Jiu-Jitsu Federation, and I would prefer to look you in the eyes to tell you. And I figured that was pretty samurai to say something like that to Hickson.
Right.
So he messaged me back. He said, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes, because I asked for 5 minutes of his time. And he's like, meet me in Santa Monica on a Tuesday. So I was so nervous. And I met Hickson on a Tuesday, and I said, how much time do I have? And he said, you got 5 minutes. And it was like, oh my God. So, one thing led to another. That 5 minutes led to over an hour. We were talking about jiu-jitsu, all things, very passionately. And he said, I want you to meet my partner, my friend, and you guys can Skype. And I stopped right at the door when we were walking back in. And I said, Hickson, I can always Skype with your partner. I want to meet him. And he was like, Tony, I can feel your heart. And he's like, meet us in Brazil in August.
Wow.
I was like, he's like, all right. So he had 24 hours to think about that conversation, that meeting. And at that meeting, I also said, listen, I knew that you wanted to do a federation. I had talked to George Pereira. Like I exposed all my truths, all my cards, and he had time to think about it. So the next day, I remember being like really tired because I was so exhausted from everything that I was writing and doing and multitasking. And I had that feeling like your eyes are open, but they're still closed behind. They're really dry. And Hickson sent me this really brief email, and he was like, I can tell that your intentions are, from the good, and we have the same mission. So let's get started. So I was like, I read that email like on my phone. I remember looking up at the mirror, and it was like my eyes were tearing, like I was so excited because I was like, me trying to get involved in like a jiu-jitsu on a bigger scale, I pretty wouldn't get a lot of attention. I mean, I would try my best. I mean, I would always, but I said, if Hickson says something, he's going to, this has a chance now. And, that was the start. So then I went down to Brazil and I met Carlos Gama, and we had a great conversations in there, and it led back to, some more meetings in LA. And, about a year before what would become the Jiu Jitsu Global Federation, I was working with Carlos and with Hickson, and then for like almost a year in the back, like going to Santa Monica and having conversations with Hickson about jiu-jitsu and doing work for like every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. Like, I always wanted to meet this guy. I always wanted to train with Hickson. I never had a chance. And now I'm like hanging out on Thursdays with the sun coming in, the wind, and we're just talking about all things jiu-jitsu. Like, for me, I had figured I hit the jackpot, and I wasn't even training with him yet. I was just like, you can't. I remember being in like the supermarket with a can of soup, and I had it in my hand. I was like going to put it in the bag, and I'm like, I don't even know who to express this to. Like, who could understand what is going to happen now?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just as a practitioner, as a student, I have access to one of the greatest jiu-jitsu guys of all time. And it's the kind of jiu-jitsu, the invisible jiu-jitsu and all this other stuff that's for real. And, all that stuff would eventually come to pass. And it was, when the Jiu Jitsu Global Federation launched, I was working so hard and doing so much, but, it doesn't matter when you have passion for something like this. So,
wow, that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
How cool how that just developed, and to be part of something so much bigger. And you started it. You got the ripple, in the water, so to speak, and just the way it all developed is just amazing. So props to you.
I feel like there were many acts of God. Like, people will never understand all the little things that had to happen for this federation to be materializing and all these things. I mean, it's total acts of God, like wind, weather, bad weather, like things like this. Like, they're just things of nature, and which led to Hickson coming back to California, and I just feel like I played a part in it, and I continue. That's my even now, now I'm in the Air Force. I'm enlisted, and I told Hickson, I said, look, I've been doing this for 3 years. I need to enlist. I want to do something bigger, for myself. And he was like, you'll always be a part of this. We had the same, we're the same, we're family now. So so he's like, whatever you're going to do, jiu-jitsu is in your DNA. So you're going to be helping the Air Force wherever you are. And you're going to bring all that knowledge back to us. And, with the way technology is, you can always reach out and, help out with any type of project that's going on. So he gave me that opportunity now. And, man, I've been working really hard in the Air Force and train jiu-jitsu still. So I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, thanks for serving, by the way. It's very admirable.
Thank you.
Absolutely. The Federation, it's been such a positive force for jiu-jitsu, and I know that you guys want to be a real unifying body. What are your thoughts on some of the recent developments, like when Master Pedro aligned with the Gracie Academy, and then recently Master Hickson and the organization decided to align as well? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, specifically, another major instructor I always wanted to meet and experience a lesson with was Master Sauer. And on my first meeting with him, I had conversed with him online, through emails, through telephone calls, because I'm a Jiu Jitsu Global Federation, and I felt like the whole world opened up to me overnight. It was like, and it was just great to meet him. And then he came out to California, and he was part of one of the original meetings for the Jiu Jitsu Global Federation. And I was like, man, I wish I could just get some private times with Master Sauer, because he had great ideas, and I could tell he was a big believer in the the direction that the Federation was heading. So when he had a collaboration, or he's working together with the Jiu Jitsu Global Federation, and then with Henner and Hiron with the Gracie University, and I could see that. I could see that coming. And Henner and Hiron, they have a big audience, and they do such good, almost like ambassador work for Jiu Jitsu. So when they got with Master Sauer and Sauer with him, I was like, man, this is really cool. This is going to be, because I know that this is now going to help the Pedro Sauer Association, which is very big in itself. And they have a big infrastructure. The Gracie University is amazing. The way that the techniques, everything's set up, the way it's all designed, and it's very clean. And of course, you have the brand, you have the history of everything, and it's just like that was just a great move. And then, behind the scenes, I know, meetings with Hickson and Henner and Master Sauer all coming together to shoot a video. That doesn't happen overnight. So it was, I'm all smiles when I see something like that, and it's just it's a good step in the right direction. Again for unity and making things come together for something bigger than Hickson, bigger than Master Sauer, bigger than Henner. When those things start to happen, this is the start for something much bigger.
Absolutely agree. It's just kind of awesome to see how all that's coming together. And when I first heard about Master Sauer, making that change, I was very surprised and very happily surprised. I was like, wow, that's huge. And then later when Master Hickson started, you saw the meetings taking place, you're like, man, this is just huge. This is huge change. But it's great. Really positive, really positive.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about, before we move on, what a great opportunity you've had, you just described with Master Hickson, to spend so much time with him, even before you started training with him, and then to have the opportunity to, train with him. It's got to be just amazing. What's a thing or a few things that stand out in your mind about just being with him, spending time with him? It could be philosophical or it could be technique, jiu-jitsu wise. What are a few things? I know there's probably a lot of things, but what are a few things that just stand out in your mind about being with him?
One thing that stood out was, of course, when I originally had the meeting with him, I was really nervous and everything like that. And I had experienced him earlier, like at a jiu-jitsu tournament, like when he walks into a room, you can kind of feel his presence. He has a presence. And then when you experience his jiu-jitsu at a seminar or something like that, it's like, man, this is the real stuff. This is awesome, right? And I remember being at the Jiu Jitsu Global Federation office, and we were doing like something with the rules, like jiu-jitsu rules, like a clinic. And there were some, a lot of different personalities, guys that had been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, Americans, people from like all over the country were there. And one of the particular attendees, he was, very East Coast, New York style. He was, I won't think he'd be skeptical, but he'd never met Hickson, and he was there, and then Hickson walks into the room, and it's like, you could see Hickson has a presence, right? So later that evening, he had sent me an email, he's thanking me all these things, and then he posted something on his social media where it was like, look, I'm a grown man, and I've met all these different jiu-jitsu guys, and I met people, some of my idols in life, et cetera. He said, but I have to say, when Hickson walked into the room, he has a presence, and I got, starstruck. So it was something like that. So he does that a lot, and it happens. It's like that. I don't know what it is. When he puts on the gi, he just becomes someone there's a lot of truth that comes out of his expression. And when you talk to him about, many things in life, they're very deep conversations, and you're going to remember them. And I've watched so many people come into the office and have those private lessons or those brief talks, and they're very, very appreciative, and it's just like that. He's like I went to Japan with Hickson and Carlos for like the Hickson Gracie Cup. And before I went, I was thinking like, maybe some things are going to happen. Like when we get off the plane, people are going to like want to take his picture, or maybe he has a story about like, so he was given a samurai sword, like a level 5 samurai, so something like ancient, like historic, Right. And maybe this is going to happen. I'm going to tell you, all those things that I thought could happen, they were happening. The moment we got off the plane, he bumped into someone that he met the first time he was in Japan. So it was like, there's no coincidence. Then we crossed the gate. There's like a news reporter there. Like, I lived in LA for over 10 years, and I never was very into Hollywood or like meeting my friends with their celebrities. And I don't understand that. Like, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. And when I was in this entourage of Hickson, we couldn't even like go 10 feet without stopping. I remember looking at Carlos. I'm like, man, it's going to be really difficult to get back to the hotel. Like what the other way going to be. And then we were having dinner in a really nice place, and Hickson and Kron was there, and Kron was telling the story about the samurai sword. And I said, what's the story about the samurai sword? And Hickson had this story about this samurai sword that he was given by some prestigious people in Japan. And basically the samurai sword was so much of like a historic, he couldn't leave the country with it. And he had a special document, and then they had to show the document. And in my back of my mind, I'm going like, everything is friggin' happening. Like that I would, like my wildest like thoughts. Because it was like
right.
very, very funny to me, But
it's like surreal, right?
It was for real, and it was just the point is, and are walking down the street, and people come up to him, they go, "Oh, Hickson Gracie," and they see him as a samurai in Japan. And when you get to meet him, there's hopefully you'll get to experience that. And I say to people, like, I can write a book about jiu-jitsu. I can tell stories all day, and I can be very humble about everything else. But I just hopefully want that if you're really passionate about jiu-jitsu, you really start to understand this. I hope that you get to experience a lesson with Hickson. That's it. Because I've trained with all the brothers. I trained with so many good people, and everything has their pieces. Like you say, man, there's always, everyone has a piece to share, and it's all good. But it's like when Hickson helps you express jiu-jitsu, you're expressing the principles of jiu-jitsu. So it's no longer about techniques anymore. It's no longer about the newest variation. It's about, what are you really, truly fighting for? And he brings it all the way back to your original introduction to jiu-jitsu, where you're like, I don't know the answer. I don't know. And then he's showing you a better way to have, using different types of principles that Hickson follows. And this is and then it's like, what makes him so great when he was a fighter and all this other stuff? It's like, he was something else.
Such a depth. I got to share this. My listeners will have heard this before, but I feel compelled to, in this conversation. My first experience with jiu-jitsu, other than the old VHS tapes, from Horion years ago and Hoist, were seminars with him. And I drove from the Florida Panhandle down to Tampa, and it was a week long. First I was just going to go for the first 2 days as beginner jiu-jitsu, and then I ended up staying all week for the intermediate. But I agree with you. The presence, when I first, this was in a big university gymnasium, and we started to gather up, and all of a sudden he comes in, just in his clothes and regular street clothes and a ball cap, and I looked and I turned away. Then I looked again, like, oh wait, that's Hickson, and then we put on his gi. Just the energy he exudes is just amazing. I mean, the guy is larger than life and has this charisma that's just undeniable. But at the same time, a very approachable humbleness about him too. There's no arrogance or ego or anything like that. At least from my experience, it's just a rare, incredible individual. So I'm glad I've had And then a few months ago, I had the opportunity to go up to Pedro Sauer's Academy, his headquarters, and Master Hickson was there again. So it had been 20 years since my initial exposure.
Yes.
So I was like, wow, this is so cool. Amazing individual.
Yes, that's. I love to hear these stories now. Like now, because people are, a lot of them like, hey, can you help me set up a seminar with him? I want to meet him. Where can I? I always like kind of, hey, he's going to be here. Go to that seminar. I'll help you get in. And then they meet Hickson, and then they express about his, his energy, his charisma. But then they said how approachable he was, and how there's no ego. Like it was. That's the real. I really appreciate that. But now, look, 20 years ago, you went past the Panhandle, and then you went to Tampa to do that seminar. That was your first exposure to jiu-jitsu.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Guess who is right now past the Panhandle and in Tampa? Me. So if you make that trip, let's train.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about some of your recent projects. You wrote a book and published a book just this year, and it's called A Story of Invisible Power, A Path Towards Jiu-Jitsu Principles and Execution. So tell us a little bit about that, and what was it like doing that project? Yeah,
it was, I wanted to do something, because I had spent all this time with Hickson and Carlos and all these different people, and like people, you got to understand, for like a 2-year period, I worked with Hickson and Carlos and a lot of times just Hickson and I just knocking out, like looking at jiu-jitsu from a curriculum point of view. Because I have a master's degree in education and curriculum instruction. I am like, that's where I really like, Hickson says, Tony, you come alive on the mat. Like when you become like an instructor I love to like really piece things together. And I remember asking questions with Hickson about, okay, you got one more chance in your life to teach the footlocker. You have one more chance to teach the triangle. What do people need to know? Like I'm working with on this level with Hickson. So I was really getting like everything, it's freaking amazing. So, I just wanted to kind of write about some of those experiences, some of my experiences before meeting with Hickson, but it's all about, what jiu-jitsu can be with your path and using the principles. So I tried to write in a very unique way. Like, I didn't want to have any chapters. I just wanted to have of course there's chapters, but I didn't want any numbers. I just wanted to say, here I was here, and this is the conversation that was going on, and then it goes to like the next point. Now it's like now we're in Brazil, and here's what was going on before the meeting with Hickson and Carlos, and now getting chased by guys with guns. It's like there's the Brazil stories. So I kind of put it all together, and then I wanted to write about jiu-jitsu, so it becomes a bunch of essays of jiu-jitsu. And with the Jiu Jitsu Global Federation, I had never written that much in my life about jiu-jitsu. So I had my brain was like always trying to produce content and think about stuff and work and all this other stuff. And I had an opportunity before I enlisted into the Air Force to write about this. And I said, look, Hickson, I want to write about this. Here's what I want to do. And if you don't give me your blessing, I won't do it. And he's like, no, I want you to do it. Do it. Be good. It would be good for jiu-jitsu. And I said, that's it. So I wanted to write it, and I wrote it. and then it was like, let's publish it. So I did. When I had a little bit of a time with, I had like a month or two before my enlistment started, my basic training where they shaved my head. And my friend Matt was like, why don't you're going to be doing some seminars? Why don't we like try to document some of this? So I said, Matt, if you want to film, maybe we'll do something. And we kind of like made the documentary called Invisible Force. Mm-hmm. And I could just sit down and talk about it. And I kind of like released, when I got out of basic and I got out of technical school, I released the book, I released the documentary all at the same time. I figured, look, if people don't want to read, if people don't read anymore, like they make jokes, they can watch the video. And the video was like a real long, almost like a commercial to, man, I want you to read the book. And I want you to have a lesson in this type of jiu-jitsu.
I watched the documentary and really enjoyed it. It was great kind of seeing you go from place to place, visit places, and just kind of follow you, the day in your life, so to speak. It was really, really cool.
Really cool. Thank you.
And people can see that on YouTube. Yes,
I just made the post the other day. It's like over 50,000 views, and it's all organic. Like we have Matt and I, we don't put any money into advertising it. It's just people want to watch it, they're going to watch it and they're going to enjoy it too. And this has been like one of the things to me, like now I guess serving for my country and doing all these amazing things in jiu-jitsu. I remember like going home with like leaving the office and then going to my place, and I got to the door and I like stopped. I was like, man, I could do anything I can do. I can do anything I want to do in my life now at this point. Like I'm older now. I have my degrees, but I've chased after some of my biggest things, like my wildest dreams, and some of them materialized. It's like I have a lot of self-confidence that goes with that. So when I wanted to enlist, I want to do it. And when you create content like a book or a video, and then someone doesn't like it, like I remember my mom saying like, well, what if people don't like it? I go, Mom, it doesn't have to be made. If it never existed, people would never not like it. So I don't know. Of course, I want people to like it, but I'm not going to get criticized. Like it's nothing if they don't like it. Like I really put it out there. This is the truth, how I saw it, and I'm welcome to debate with anybody. But this is a real thing. It's like if you don't believe in the video, you don't believe in the book. Like let's go to the mat, and that has been like my most exciting thing because Hickson's like. He's like, Tony, like I had some really big opportunities to do some things in Asia with videos and instruction because I had all this content And I had, people, you have this thing. I was like, I don't want to do that. I just want to go into the Air Force. I don't want to be on video anymore, and I had a long talk with Hickson. I was like, I don't even want to distribute DVDs anymore. Like, I don't want to do that. Because he's like, that's right, Tony, because that's not your jiu-jitsu anymore. The jiu-jitsu that you're doing now, that's what you need to put out. He's like, so it's not the DVDs anymore. It's the jiu-jitsu that you're doing. And it's like, man, the only way I can get people to experience that is for me to sweat and get on the mats with them. And then I go, I guess if that's the way it's got to be. It's the way it's got to be. And now I'm even harder to have that because I'm enlisted in the Air Force. So if you're not training with me like on the weekends or at night at the local gym here, that's it. I made the promise to Hickson that I'll never videotape myself, things that he showed to me personally, and I would never videotape that and distribute that. It's not right. And it's an interesting thing. But with that being said, there are certain things that I feel every day, like things that I discover, and I'm passionate about it. I want people to see it. So I think that's different. So I played this fine line, and my girlfriend, she recently said, well, why don't you have an app? And I was like, because I never looked into it. And she said, you should do an app. And she kind of like challenged me, and I was always curious. Like, I wanted to learn about it. And, one thing led to another. In the next couple of days, I'm designing my own app, the Soul Fight app. Nice. And I figured it'd be a cool way to see if it would work. And then it became like a little, I got excited about the project, and, I'm kind of back into jiu-jitsu again. Like, every night I'm working on the little project. So I just did it, Soul Fight app, and it's a free app, and it just talks a little bit about my history. You can find the book, find the documentary, and then there are some videos that I like to shoot, Japanese jiu-jitsu, Gracie jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, but it's like what I'm doing now. It's just, that's it. That's what I'm up to.
And I just want to say, and I downloaded the app a couple of days ago, and I just want to let the listeners know that it's a really great app, and I feel like everybody should definitely check it out. I've watched a few of the videos so far, and I started with the Elio Gracie final position. Really enjoyed that, and it's just a really good app, and I encourage everybody to check it out. You mentioned in doing the Elio Gracie final position that you learned that with Pedro Valente, right?
Yes. Being in Florida right now, I have an opportunity to, I can go to Miami on the weekends. I just got to be back. I only have like an 8-hour radius, and if the Air Force calls me, I got to be back right on base for whatever. And I have the weekend, and I've been able to go down to Miami a few times. And the one time I finally got to meet Professor Valenti and his brother and go to his academy, it was like a Saturday afternoon, and I took all the classes, and sadly it was the day his father passed away. So it was a very unique, interesting moment. But I mean, if we can just say, like, that day he was like, here's a position, and I really enjoyed Pedro's, his teaching approach. And he made like for example, he made a handshake defense like enjoyable, and the way he presented it was, I was so curious, like, hey, what's the defense? He made like a handshake defense, something that was educational and exciting. It was just the way it was presented and how it was taught. And then he arrived to the mounted position. He said, Bill, we do this with jiu-jitsu. We get fascinated about chokes, and we want to know everything about it. And he said, this is Elio Gracie's in his last month of life. I went down to Brazil, and he said, hey, grab your gi, and I want to show you this move I'm working on. And he was basically imitating Grandmaster Elio, and he showed his final move. So I was like, man, that's pretty cool. I want to start doing that. And I came back to Tampa, and I started experimenting with it more, and I came up with some of my own variations, and that was something that I filmed the other day, and I put on the app. So that's it. It was
very
good.
Cool.
So
very cool. Much respect for the Valentes. I had Professor Guy on the show, and definitely love hearing them talk about the history with Grandmaster Elio. But back to the app again. It's been great. I've only had a chance to watch a few of the videos so far, but there is a ton of content on there, and it's very well done, very professional. So check it out for everyone listening.
Thank you. I just want to make a point because it's on the App Store and then Google Play. And that was kind of like before, I mean, all the jiu-jitsu aside, it's just learning the different technology. I remember like the company I'm working with, they're like, look, you need to change this because Apple doesn't like this. And then I changed it to what, then Google didn't like what Apple, it was like, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like you know, things aren't, these two big powerhouses aren't going to work together, but I had to revise certain things to just make it work. And eventually it was launched on the day that I said it would launch. So that's part of the overall experience of trying to do something like this, which I know it's just, that's how life is. That's how startups are. And that's how little projects are. So
it is, but it's been fun. You know, nothing you set out to do is ever as easy as you think it's going to be, right? Or run as smoothly as you think it will be. But that's all part of the process and the growing and learning and developing. And I admire you because you've, instead of waiting till, not that your stuff isn't perfect, but I was going to say, instead of waiting till something, you know, everything, you know, 100% or perfect, you get an idea and you start going with it. And then you kind of learn along the way, it seems to me. And that's part of the journey. And the end is a great product. So.
I think that's a great advice or a tip for like your listeners, anybody trying to do something. I've always been like, since I was little, like younger, teenager, like I remember like some of my first mentors, like, my God, Tony, you're so single-minded. Like you think about jiu-jitsu, this is what you want to do. You're going to do it. And then I would show examples in my life where I'd pursue this, you know, getting finished work, going to the gym, doing all my things. So I would, you know, set a goal for myself and I would try my best. And even if I didn't know what I was doing, I would be working towards understanding it. And that's just part of my personality. I want to be able to do this. And I think this is very important for anything like it's project-based, because sometimes people become such perfectionists in what they're doing that they'll never release the product. It's never. And then you see television shows like Shark Tank, and you watch the people that will finance and fund certain projects, and the different personalities. They say, so how far along are you? Like, how did you design this? He's like, oh, me and myself, and I'm 60% finished. And then the guy goes, I pass, I'm out. And then you start to look like, why did he just pass on that guy? Because he's working with the person that's a perfectionist. They're never going to produce their product because they never think it's right. Versus the other guy that's, you know, here's the product, it's ready to go. We can improve it as we go, and that's the person that gets funded.
Very true. Very true.
So that's the idea.
Great words to consider. Well, before we wrap up, little Tony, do you have anybody you want to shout out to or say thank you to or anything or acknowledge in any way?
Well, I'm happy. Thank you very much for this. The Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. I haven't done one of these podcasts in a long time. And, you know, because it's hard, you know, when you're so involved in jiu-jitsu so close, and it's very difficult to voice your opinions because you have to wait to see how everybody else is thinking, and you know, it's the politics of working with different teams and everything like that. But I was looking forward to this conversation. So thank you, Marty. And
my pleasure.
Overall, it's just, you know, I always thank like Steve Maxwell for being so. Like, he was like a visionary. He was the first, you know, one of the guys in Pennsylvania to bring Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and to travel out to California, bring it back, and all the Gracie brothers. And of course, one of my biggest thing is just when I met with Hickson and Carlos Gama, and I've always like appreciate that in my heart. And of course, just people that are doing good things now. So keep it up. You know, the people that are doing good and really working towards, you know, whatever that dream is going to be, we somehow like know when you're heading in the right direction. Like the community knows, and they're going to support it. And that's my advice to some of the younger guys that are the blue belts and the purple belts. It's just keep going, and when it's right, it's the right time. It will materialize, and everything that you ever worked for, everything that was good, all those things matter. So that's the good thing.
Very true. Well, I want to say thank you for your time and letting us get to know you better and learn more about your experience. And thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge. I'm sure a lot of people are going to benefit greatly from hearing this conversation. So thank you very much, little Tony.
Thank you. I really hope so. And again, that Soul Fight app, it's really a way for you and I to connect. And I have a little thing on there. It's just called guidance, because I get messaged all the time on social media, through emails, even now through my military email. Like, people are like, I saw your documentary. Is this the real you? I say, yeah, I'm here. And they're like, well, when you get to Germany, if you get to Germany, train with us. And I'm always just involved with jiu-jitsu. So I put it on the app, guidance. So just reach out to me. And I always like to hear people's stories. And if I can help in any way, let me know.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Marty.
Well, yeah, much respect, and I wish you a long, healthy, happy life, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Time now for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. Let's start with a quote. I have not always chosen the safest path. I have made my mistakes, plenty of them. I sometimes jump in too soon and fail to appreciate the consequences, but I've learned something important along the way. I've learned to heed the call of my heart. I've learned that the safest path is not always the best path, and I've learned that the voice of fear is not always to be trusted. Steve Goodyear. So what in your life have you not done because of fear or indecision? What dreams do you have? What longing in your heart is there to express itself that you've stuffed down and not followed up on? I encourage you to think about these, because life goes very fast, life is short, and we all get caught up in living our daily existence. Let me share another quote. Before the plan, there is an idea. Before the idea, there is a purpose. Before the purpose, there is your spirit, aching to express itself. And that's from Paresh Shah. What is it in your life that you would like to accomplish? What are your goals, your aspirations? What are some dreams that maybe you've had that you've let go, that you've forgotten about because you've gotten into the rut of life? It's time to wake up. It's time to go for it. It's time to leave behind that notion of that you've got to have it all figured out or have it perfect before you can do this, before you can accomplish this goal, before you can live your dream. Don't wait until things are perfect. Things will never be perfect. It's time to realize this. It's time to take action. It's time to get clear on your goal, decide what you want, and to go for it. With all your imperfections, with all your self-doubts and insecurities, it's time to do it. So make a plan, break it down into small, achievable chunks, reward yourself with every small goal that you attained along the way. Keep your mind directed and keep shooting for that goal, for that target. And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. As always, I thank you for listening. I appreciate all feedback, so if you have feedback, please don't hesitate to give it. If you have ideas for the show or for guests, please let me know about those. You can leave feedback on the website at www.graciejujitsurocks.com. You can also leave feedback on iTunes, and while you're there, make sure to rate the show. It helps us with our standing in iTunes. If you haven't liked us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter, please go ahead and do that. And don't forget to share the episodes on your Facebook and social media. Again, thanks again for listening, and until next time, this is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.